Hi, I'm Dave Annal, professional genealogist with over 40 years' experience as a researcher. In a previous life, I was the development manager at the Family Record Centre, or FRC, in London. I spent the best part of 10 years working in Myddelton Street in Clerkenwell, and during that time, I developed a fascination with the history of the area. In 1752, Thomas Bowles published this beautiful print entitled The North Prospect of London, taken from the bowling green at Islington. The detail is quite astonishing, and the contrast between the rural scenes in the foreground, the north, and the urban sprawl to the south is striking. The image captures the point where this area was right on the very edge of what would have been considered London. And in among the fields, with their horses, cattle, and sheep, we have the reservoir and pumping station and waterworks of London's New River Company. The upper pond, now covered and surrounded by Claremont Square, was open and was apparently a popular leisure area, with people out walking their dogs, fishing, or just taking a stroll. And talking of leisure pursuits, we can see just to the east of the New Riverhead itself an early incarnation of Sadler's Wells. But the most significant feature of this panorama from our point of view is that it gives us our first glimpse of what was to become Myddelton Street. We can just make out the future course of the street at this stage, a trackway with a fence just behind it and horses in the field to the south. Note the triangle formed by this path and the future alignment of Garnault Place, full of people heading to Sadler's Wells. We can use maps to gain an understanding of how the area developed, and one of the best early large-scale maps of London was produced in 1746 by John Rock, making it a close contemporary of Thomas Bowles' panorama. If we navigate to Clerkenwell Church and head north, we come to London Spa, and we can see the shape formed by the footpaths here, with the future course of Myddelton Street heading north and east, and that instantly recognisable triangle being formed by what was to become Garnault Place. Some 50 years after John Rock, a map maker called Richard Horwood embarked on an even more ambitious enterprise, producing the first edition of his Plan of the Cities of London and Westminster, the Borough of Southwark and parts adjoining, in 1792. Not much has changed since Rock's map. The London Spa is still there on the corner of Brains Row and Rosamond Street, with the familiar footpath leading from the junction. And there's that shape again, the triangle formed by the two easternmost tracks, the future Garnault Place and our own Myddelton Street. This road pattern got me thinking. It does occur in other parts of London, but it's not common, and it got me wondering about why it should have developed like this. By the early 19th century, London had started to expand northwards and in other directions too, and Islington in particular was a thriving, bustling settlement just to the north of Clerkenwell. The land around the New Riverhead and Sadler's Wells, however, remained undeveloped, and yet with Sadler's Wells and other similar attractions in the vicinity, large numbers of people were drawn to the area. So when they got to the junction of Rosamond Street and Baines Row, now Exmouth Market, they came to a gate, and they had a choice of a number of different directions they could head off in to get to the attraction of their choice, and there were lots to choose from. But the point here is that it was the paths formed by people walking across the fields which dictated the future layout of the roads in the area. Is a concept known today as desire paths. And when we switch to William Faden's 1819 revision of Horwood's map, we can see this phenomenon graphically illustrated. The paths through the fields are now laid out as roads. Our path has become Myddelton Street, and the first few houses in Myddelton Street have appeared. Rate books are an underused resource. They tend to be held by local record offices, and there's not a lot available online. The Clerkenwell rate books are held at the local history centre at Islington Library. Here's a page from the first Clerkenwell rate book to mention Myddelton Street. It dates from 1816. Although rate books don't give you a huge amount of genealogical information, they can help to pinpoint the movements of your ancestors, as this volume from 1840 neatly illustrates. This is the first appearance of a family called Shallcross, who lived in the same house in Myddelton Street, number 71, for nearly 100 years. I'll just briefly mention Charles Booth's poverty maps. Booth's survey, Life and Labour of the People in London, was published in 17 volumes between 1889 and 1903, and as part of the survey, he and his team produced these maps which graphically depict the relative wealth of every street in London. It's known for the typically judgmental Victorian language used to describe the different classes, from the wealthy, upper middle and upper classes, all the way through the middle classes, the comfortable and the poor, to the lowest class, which Booth describes as vicious, semi-criminal. Both sides of Myddelton Street are classified as fairly comfortable, good ordinary earnings, and in the accompanying notebooks, we can read the researcher's notes on the streets. He writes about Myddelton Street: west along Myddelton Street, 3-storey business houses, small employers, brass plates, workshops behind, pink as map. It's clear from the records that 19th century Myddelton Street was largely occupied by craftsmen and artisans, living in their comfortable houses and working in the sheds and workshops to the rear. And it soon became the centre of one trade in particular, London's watchmaking trade. At the time of the 1841 census, there were 81 houses in Myddelton Street. Of those, 28, more than a third, were involved in the watchmaking trade, including jewellers, engravers and clockmakers. This page shows no fewer than 4 such households, with the other houses in the stretch of Myddelton Street occupied by plumbers, tailors, milliners and shoemakers, a grocer, an artificial florist and a whip maker, and interestingly, one person described as of independent means. By the mid-1890s, watchmaking and associated trades dominated Myddelton Street, as we can see from this 1895 Post Office directory. Diamond setters at number 68 and 69, a watch manufacturer at number 70, are Mr. Shallcross, an escapement maker at number 71, jewel case makers at 72, 73 and 74, a watch jeweller at 75, an engraver at 76, and so on. This is the earliest graphic view I've come across of Myddelton Street, unless you count the panorama from the 1750s. It's the triangular shape, once again, that gives it away, but this, as we'll see in later pictures, is the building on the corner of Myddelton Street and Garnolt Place, known as Myddelton House. Moving forward about 50 years, and here's a typical street scene in Edwardian London, notable for the complete lack of motor or even any other wheeled vehicles, apart from one man on a bicycle riding into the distance. On the 4th of July 1944, Garnolt Place was the site of the most violent episode in the history of the area, when a V1 bomb struck the houses at the top end of the road, causing a colossal amount of damage. This photograph shows firefighters in action in Garnolt Place following the attack. The London Metropolitan Archives has a series of bomb maps showing the location of every bomb to have fallen on London during World War II, and an assessment of the damage caused. The map for the Clerkenwell area shows that the houses at the junction of Garnolt Place and Green Terrace were totally destroyed, and several of the neighbouring houses were damaged beyond repair. The blast also damaged houses in Myddelton Street itself, and the block where the FRC was later situated was described as seriously damaged, repairable with significant cost. Here's a lovely view of Myddelton Street in the 1960s, showing that it was still a busy, lively street. It seems as if the buildings in the northwestern block of Myddelton Street were repaired, at least well enough to allow them to be safely occupied. Myddelton House is now occupied by Finsbury Radio and Television, selling radios, TVs, ever-ready batteries, and you'll be delighted to hear, offering Green Shield stamps as an incentive. This view, taken around the same time but from the other end of the street, shows the area beginning to decline. The pub on the corner, the White Hart, which had been there since the street was first laid out, was pulled down in the 1940s, possibly as a result of bomb damage. But the grand block of houses covering most of the northwest segment of Myddelton Street, and including the former Shallcross residence at number 71, was still very much in occupation. But it wasn't to be for long. This picture dates from around 1975, while the demolition of the whole block was in progress. The house on the left of the block here is number 71, and the steps leading up to the front door are in almost exactly the same place as the steps which you walked up as you entered the Family Record Centre 30 years or so later. And so we come to the present day and the latest triangular building on the site, home to the FRC from April 1997 to March 2008, and photographed here in 2019. We've covered nearly 400 years of history in about 10 minutes. And we've looked at a wide range of sources and resources, which I hope have whetted your appetite and inspired you to go out and do the same for your own area. Whether it's an urban area or a rural area, there are some amazing sources out there in your local and county record offices just waiting to be discovered. If nothing else, I hope I've convinced you that family history and local history are really the same discipline, just approached from a slightly different angle.